Welcome in, college football fans. It's that time again. It's time for the First and Long College Football Show. We are going to be breaking down the preview for the Oklahoma Sooners. We are through the spring game, spring portal window. I think we have a pretty good grasp of what these teams are going to be heading into fall camp. Really excited to jump into OU as they are making their way onto the scene, hopefully bursting on the scene. If you're an Oklahoma Sooners fan, super excited to dive into this one. Mason, how you doing today, man? Are you ready to talk some Oklahoma football today?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been really high on this team for most of the offseason. And I think that we'll highlight some reasons to be excited about this team. And also, there's one glaring error or mistake or challenge, I think is probably the best way to put it for this team. One position group in particular, you probably already know who that is or which position group that is. And I'm excited to get into it with you. We haven't shared notes. We don't know what each other are going to say. So I'm excited to break this down with you and see kind of, if we came up with the same conclusion on this.
Yeah, man. I mean, I feel like there was a lot of mixed emotions for Oklahoma last year, and here we are. This is the third year into the Brent Venables era, and I think that the expectation is I think the expectation is similar to the results of last year. But last year finishing 10-3 in the Big 12, it's going to be pretty tough to finish with 10 wins in the SEC this year. Only so many teams in the SEC can get to 10 wins, and I feel like that's the watermark for so many fan bases in the SEC at this point. So somebody's getting disappointed, and I think that a realistic number would probably be under that. But we're going to go dive into this team, and I want to take it position group by position group. And all you Oklahoma fans, if you're watching this, we hope that you'll subscribe to the First and Long College Football Show. We're a small show, just a couple of fans just like you. Chopping it up college football style. We put content out every week, and typically doing live shows. But as we do all these breakdowns, we're just going to be releasing these throughout the weeks of the summer for your viewing pleasure, and it gives everybody a chance to really brush up on the ins and outs of all of these contenders. We've got about 35 teams or so that we're going to be taking a look at and taking a deep dive before fall practice. So we hope that you'll come and join us for that. We try to give the most honest and non-biased viewpoint that we can on each of these teams, and we really rely on you though to comment in the comment section and tell us what your thoughts are on these teams. Nobody knows their team better than their own fan base, and we would love to hear from you all. And shout out to Pops. Our Pop is a huge Oklahoma Sooners fan. We'll be attending a game in Norman this year, and I'm super excited for him to be able to do that, and I know he's excited as well. So shout out to you, Pop. Hope you enjoy this one. Let's jump into it, Mason. As I said before, it was a 10-3 season last year. Finished ranked, in the top 25. I think it was a very solid year. There were some great moments for this Oklahoma team last year. Beating Texas, namely, was one of the most memorable wins, I think, of the season. And up until that point in the season, really had Oklahoma in a driver's seat for a possible college football playoff. It was a pretty impressive year, honestly. Dropped a couple of games in a row there towards the last quarter of the season, and I think kind of quieted things down nationally. But all in all, I think it was a pretty good season for Brent Venables in his second year at Oklahoma, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. A huge step up from 2022 when they won only 6 games. This was a 6-7 team in 22 under Brent Venables' first full season, and in year two, they add 4 wins. I mean, I think most programs would take that, right?
Yeah.
Um, what was most impressive though was on the defensive side of the ball. This is a defensive coach, former defensive coordinator for Clemson, longtime defensive coordinator for Clemson when they were winning championships, and you expect him to come in and and be a great defensive coach right away. Well, he wasn't in year one, right?
Yeah.
The team was still trying to figure out what the heck this is. This is a brand new system. This is a team that hasn't played great sound defense in over a decade. And now
Yeah.
they've got Brent Venables coming in, giving all new concepts. A huge step up from year one to year two. I think they ended up around 45 in points allowed, whereas the year before they were outside of the top 100, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a huge metric in itself. But all the ancillary stats were through the roof. I mean, they were top 10 in a lot of categories and takeovers, interceptions, tackles for a loss. I mean, there were a lot of pretty key stats and statistics that were trending upwards. And I think that we're going to see more of that as we break this team down. There's a lot to like about this Oklahoma defense. And that's what Oklahoma fans wanted out of this new head coach. And I think that that's what they're getting out of Venables.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a really, really strong offense last year.
Mhm.
It gave everybody they played fits. Scored a lot of points. As you can see there, scored 542 points. That's pretty high. As I've broken a lot of these teams down and looking at these stats and stuff. I mean, they scored a lot of points, Mason, and gonna have some changes obviously with that offense. So let's dive into that offense first, and we'll kind of just start from a bird's eye view. You've got Joe John Finley and Seth Luttrell going to be taking over as offensive coordinators, co-offensive coordinators, that is. Both of these guys have been in the program already and were promoted from within. One of them was an offensive analyst and one of them was a tight ends coach. So new offensive coordinators, new quarterback, and a new offensive line is the trend for this Oklahoma offense. So we named the coaches. The new quarterback is going to be none other than Jackson Arnold. And if you watched at the end of the year last year in that Alamo Bowl and throughout the year, there were certain times where he got in the game. He was spotty. I would say that would be a good way to put it. Had some issues protecting the football at times. And I think that is 100% to be expected whenever you've got a young guy taking over at a big time college football program and kind of being thrown into the wings a little bit. But for this year's purposes, 2024 season's purposes, I think it was great. It gave this guy a ton of experience. I'm going to tell you something, Mason. When I watched the spring game, I could tell that he learned from that experience in that bowl game. I could tell that there was an active effort to protect the football in the spring game, and he did a good job of that. Completion percentage wasn't great. I think Jackson Arnold completed like 50% of his passes in that spring game, but guess what? He protected the football, and I think that that's much more important. You can work on the completion percentage as you go, but you can only turn the ball over so many times and keep that starting job. So I thought it was baby steps in the right direction, and my goodness, buddy, I think that they have upgraded athletically. Jackson Arnold is fleet of foot, and I think that he's got an overall stronger arm than Dylan Gabriel does as well. It was nice to see a couple of balls overthrown a little bit. That's not something that Oklahoma fans have seen a ton over the last couple of years. So I think that there's a lot to look at with Jackson Arnold and wonder about going into this season, as there would be for any young player. But man, I think there was definitely some things that we saw that kind of popped on paper and on film. Don't you think?
Yeah, no doubt. This is the reason this player Jackson Arnold is the reason that I'm so high on Oklahoma this 2024 season. I think that he's in 2024. I think he's got a boomer bust potential. I think long term he's going to be really good. I think in 2025 he's going to be really good. But for 2024, all I want to see is progress, protecting the football, like you mentioned in the spring game, and can we get, I don't expect him to be completing 75% of his passes week one. Excuse me. But can we get better completion percentages as the season goes on? Can we get better decision making as the season goes on? He's got a big arm. Young players with big arms tend to want to go towards the deep ball. How does he manage that? Is he going to be able to dropped the ball off to one of his very talented running backs. The thing is, and we're going to get into to this here in just a bit, he's got a lot of weapons around him. How is he going to play point guard and utilize those weapons and understand that he doesn't have to put this team on his back? He's got the weapons and the pieces around him to do so if he's going to be staying upright.
Yeah. And he's going to have to think very quickly. There was a couple of times in the RPO game that I saw in the spring showing where there was just a millisecond. He was just a millisecond behind making a decision. And we're going to get into the offensive line, as you said, here in just a minute, but I don't think that this is going to be an offensive line that's going to be able to pass protect for long periods of time. I don't think you're going to see a lot of situations where Jackson Arnold is taking a 7-step drop and hopping around, waiting on somebody to improvise. I don't think that that's what this offense is going to look like. And I think that Jackson Arnold, if he's smart, like I think that he is, I think he'll accept the fact that the short game, the run game, and the intermediate game is going to be, I think, where Oklahoma butters their bread this season as far as offensively. But speaking of some of those weapons, let's jump into wide receiver because I'm itching to talk about wide receiver for this Oklahoma club. Very, very excited about this wide receiver class. We talked about it whenever we did one of our transfer episodes earlier in the season. Deion Burke coming over from Purdue might prove to be one of the biggest gets for any title contender or Power 4 conference contender. Deion Burke is electric and going to be hard for any team to handle. This is a guy, and I remember from our transfer episode that we did where we talked about Deion Burke, this was a guy I'm pretty sure that didn't play a couple of years in high school. There was a couple of years where he didn't even play. And so this is a guy that's he's got a lot of tread left on the tires, okay? And he is just hitting his stride. Athletically, his God-given ability, his size is just becoming into form. And last year at Purdue, which I didn't think was a very good Purdue team to begin with, was one of the most dynamic playmakers that team had, bar none. So this was a huge get, and he did not disappoint in the spring game, buddy. He was hitting them left and right, 50-yarder, 60-yarder, missed another bomb, and he looks like a really, really, really good route runner. And there he is pictured there, along with some other transfer portal additions. What did you think about the wide receiver core? And I didn't even mention these other guys. We'll get to them in a minute. But did you see Deion Burke in the spring game and how athletic and explosive he looked?
Yeah, absolutely. He was as advertised. This was a guy that anybody in the country would have taken. Seriously, outside of maybe Ohio State. This is a guy who would start on just about every other roster. So I was really impressed with him. I think he's as advertised. And, when you look at the statistics alone, you see some guys who pop in this wide receiver room. Jalil Farouk is one for sure that pops. Nick Anderson is a guy who pops. 10 touchdowns last year, 800 yards. Guy's a freak. But also Andrell Anthony has a chance to be the best receiver of the bunch. This is a guy who had over 400 yards in October when he got hurt in the Texas game. So, or 398. He was around 400 yards anyways. But I think that they're deep at wide receiver. They've also got a tight end transfer, Jake Roberts, coming in. I think that he's going to be able to add a little bit of a different dynamic to this offense. And I'm excited to see what they do with the weapons that they have in the receiving game.
Well, to add on to your wide receiver comments there before I move over to tight end, because tight end is something that I feel like is really important that we need to talk about. But I just wanted to kind of put a cherry on that statement with the wide receiver group. This is a great room, guys. This is a really good wide receiver room. Jalil Farouk, 45 receptions last year, 694 yards. He was on the sideline. I guess he had maybe some surgery or something like that. He was on the sideline for the spring game rooting on his teammates, which I'm always happy to see somebody cheering for their team whenever they're on the sideline. I think that's the sign of a good man and a good teammate. But the deal with Jalil Farouk last year, and I feel like was kind of one of the only missing pieces for this offense last year, was he didn't score touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
He was great in between the 20s. 700 yards receiving is awesome in today's college football with all the weapons that are on the field at the same time, but only 2 touchdowns the whole season. And the year before that, he had less yards and 5 touchdowns. So I think that they're going to want to try to figure out a way to get him more incorporated in the red zone. But more importantly, I think maybe that's where Deion Burks kind of butters his bread, is in the red zone and giving them an option that they didn't have last year to score touchdowns instead of kick field goals. And I think that is going to be very, very important this year as they go into the SEC. We're going to talk about the defense in a minute. I don't think it's horrible, but I don't think it's great yet. And this offense is going to have to score points to get in the win column the amount of times that Oklahoma fans are wanting to do so. And I'm not saying it's not possible, because this offense has got a lot of potential. Now, let's talk about tight end, because you had talked about what was it, Jacob? That tight end.
Jake Roberts.
Jake Roberts. Well, I don't think he was there for the spring game, was he? Maybe I just missed him. I'm not completely sure on that, but I will say this: Bauer, however you pronounce his name, from southeastern Louisiana, he transfers over. Look, I'm not saying he's not a good player, Mason. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I don't think that this guy is ready to play every down in the SEC, and This is a little bit of a concern for me, because, and it's going to tie into another concern that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. They're going to have to get as many bodies on that line as possible. I think you're going to want to have a tight end. I think if they had it their way, there's going to be times maybe they'd want to run a couple of tight ends, but I don't think they're going to have the talent to do it. And Bauer Sharp, I think, is a guy that's got a lot of potential, and I'm not sure about Jake Roberts yet. We'll have to see whenever we get to, see how he fits into this scheme and offense. But I think that they're just another year away, or possibly, and some good recruits away at tight end, and hoping that comes through for them. So let's talk about offensive line. 4 starters gone from last year, Mason. 4 starters gone from what I think was a really good offense last year. That creates quite the obstacle for an offense that is trying to break in a new quarterback. And I think the cheese could easily fall off the cracker here. And if there's a weakness on this offense, this is it. We saved it for the last category here. Look, Sexton looks good. I don't think they even caught it in the spring game, the announcers or anything, but they moved him over to guard during the game. And this guy's like 6'5". Seems like a prototypical tackle to me. And I don't think that they moved him over there to permanently leave him there or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but I think it just kind of shows you the open-mindedness that these coaches have at this moment to try everything they can, every combination possible, whatever bodies they've got. They've got to figure out some solutions on the offensive line. The guy you see on your screen all the way to the right here, Fabechi Nwewu, dang, I said that pretty good. He, I thought, played pretty good, but this offensive line got wore out as that spring game went on, and I think it really kind of shows the lack of depth right now. And I think that the Oklahoma Sooners are addressing that the best that they can. But 350-pound, 325-pound offensive linemen don't grow on trees, Mason. And in a spring portal, they cost a lot of money, and there's still not many to go around, even with the portal. So I think that we're still a year or two away from this Oklahoma offensive line being, one of the best that we've seen, or even as good as what we've seen from Oklahoma in past years. Heck, there's a ton of offensive linemen in the NFL right now from Oklahoma. I don't see a ton of those guys on this line right this second, but guys like Michael Tarquin and Nwewu are going to have opportunities, and I'm hoping for Oklahoma's sake that these guys are going to be able to step up.
Right, absolutely. I mean, this is the catalyst that I was hitting at earlier to the success of this team in the SEC. It's going to be this offensive line. The offense as a whole only returns 4 starters. 2 of those were wide receivers, a quarterback. If you want to count him as a starter, he didn't start the season, but depending on how you look at that, and then a running back. So no starters return. Now you have players who started some games, but the true starting 5 offensive line is not there. They're not present.
Yeah.
So they, at center, I think that there's a real question mark with Troy Everett. This was a guy that they tried. He's had some starts, but they had to transition away from him last season. So that's alarming as you're heading into the SEC. Maybe he's gotten better. Hopefully for the Sooners' sake, he has. And then you mentioned Jacob Sexton, moving him around. I think that is because of the guy you see on your screen, Michael Tarquin, coming in. He's got to have somewhere to play potentially, and with Spencer Brown playing on at right tackle, I think that you're going to see a little bit of movement on that offensive line. So I think that they have a good 6, not great, but a good 6 that they can play with. Beyond that, a couple of redshirt freshmen, a talented freshman in Eugene Brooks, I think, a redshirt sophomore. So you kind of lose your depth after the starting 6 or the cycle of 6 if that's how they decide to play it. Like you mentioned, this is going to define the season for this Oklahoma Sooners offense. And the good thing is they have, first of all, we kind of glossed over the running backs, but I think an outstanding running back in Sawchuk. Guys, in both seasons, he's averaged 6.2 yards per carry. Got to get this guy the football. Now, a lot of that has to do with great offensive line play that was in front of him. But I think in general, he's twitchy, and he can help out a young quarterback and also an inexperienced offensive line and inexperience playing together, right? Let's see, Hatchett, I think was the player who, or it might have been Brown, the one who came from Michigan State, had a ton of snaps, right? And overall, the guys that they brought in have a ton of snaps in general. So it's not a lack of experience; it's a lack of experience in this system as a whole. I think that if they can hit on 4 out of 5 of these positions, they're going to be in good shape. Like I said, the weapons that they have at quarterback and running back and receiver, I mean, everywhere else on the field, maybe tight end, okay, there's a question mark at tight end, but overall, they have so many good weapons that all we need is good play out of this offensive line, and we're going to see another good, great, outstanding, potentially Oklahoma Sooners offense.
Well, and I did totally gloss over the running backs there. Caleb Hicks, Gavin Sawchuk, Sam Franklin, who's the transfer from UT Martin. That's a great 1-2-3 punch there. Honestly, they're lucky one of those guys didn't transfer out, to be honest with you. Very, very difficult to have 3 really good guys at any position. And if Gavin Sawchuk can stay healthy, that was the only problem last year. He would have been a 1,000-yard rusher. And so I like Sawchuk, and I said in our earlier preseason prediction or pre-spring prediction, I guess you could say, or preview, I had said that I like Sawchuk, but I don't see anything else, and I'm starting to see it. Caleb Hicks was a guy who did not have a lot of carries last year, but looks to be very explosive, and I'm pretty excited to see him as well. And as we said at the beginning of the offensive section here when we were talking about quarterbacks, Jackson Arnold's going to run the football as well. So don't get it twisted. This is a team that is going to be able to run the football, I think, and this offensive line looked more comfortable running the football, which I think that's pretty normal, but they looked more comfortable running the football than they did in pass protection in the spring game anyway. And so I'm interested to see if that's going to correlate over to the season. But all in all, I thought the offense, it was a really good showing in the beginning of that spring game, and then the defense stepped up. And speaking of defense, let's slide over there and let's talk about it. Points per game last year, first in the country. Yards per game, 67th in the country. Those are probably a couple of your most important stats. But, you talked about at the beginning of this segment, there was some glimmers of hope. And one of those was opponent third down conversion, 30.96%. That's 14th in the country. That's solid. Holding somebody under 35% on third down is very, very solid. I think that's a big deal. I think you would maybe give up some yards to be able to get some stops on third downs in today's college football and be okay with that. But all in all, this was the weakness of this team last year. When they lost the game, it wasn't because the offense couldn't score, Mason. It was because the defense couldn't hold the other team within really under 30. So I want to say maybe every time they held them under 30, they probably won. But let's kind of talk about one of the strengths of this defense first. And one of the things that I'm most impressed with this defense is the linebacker room. This linebacker room is stacked. And I had talked about, in the running back room getting lucky that so-and-so came back. Oklahoma's lucky that Danny Stutsman came back. He could have been gone. Could have been off to the next chapter of his college football career, his football career. And now you've got Lewis Carter, Kip Lewis, Jaron Canick, and there was another one too that really popped to me on paper. This is a loaded linebacker room, and I think it's going to be the strength of this defense this year. What say you?
Yeah, it definitely has the potential to, and this is on the defense alone. You had 7 returning starters, right? You mentioned all of these guys here returning starters, and I think that having the cohesion in the middle of the defense is going to play a pivotal role for this team, and ultimately, this is going to be a dangerous defense. I think for the SEC and just in college football in general. But I think this could potentially be a top 5 defense in the SEC, which is saying something.
Wow, yeah. And if they're going to do it, it's going to be on the backs of these linebackers, right, that are pictured here, especially Danny Stutsman. I have to say, I'm all about guys getting out there and competing. Danny Stutsman was out there trying to lay the wood to people in the spring game. And I believe he's either a 5th year or he's just a straight up senior or something like that. You can't coach competitive nature. You can't coach that into somebody. This guy wants to compete. Even if it's a spring game, you're not going to hold him out onto the sideline. And I think that is super, super admirable. A couple of guys that have been picked up by this defense, and we're talking about linebackers, and we'll kind of transition into the defensive line because, guys, I'll be honest with you, we could go down the list of all the linebackers they got, but I think we're safe to say that they're going to be good in that position this year, just barring just a crazy amount of injuries or something. I think linebacker's going to be fine. Caden Woolard and Demonic Williams, these are a couple of great portal additions right here. And I feel like I didn't see much of Woolard in the spring game. Maybe I was watching the offense too much. I was so much new on that offense. I was really trying to soak that in. But this is a highly sought after guy. And as you can see in 2023 at Maryland, he had 9.5 sacks last year. And this was a Maryland team that was really good against the run last year.
That was Miami of Ohio.
Miami of Ohio. I'm sorry.
Right.
So there's somebody else that somebody had just picked up from Maryland, and so now I'm getting my M's mixed up. Anyway, Caden Woolard, a great player to add to this defense, a nice edge piece, but the best piece that's been added through this transfer portal, maybe I'm stretching there, but one of the best definitely of the spring portal is Damonic Williams.
Mhm.
Man, this just broke LSU's heart. Oklahoma's been in the SEC for like 2 seconds and have just totally shattered the worlds of Tiger fans down there in LSU, down on the bayou, and really caused quite a ripple effect with the LSU coach saying that, well, we're not buying players, and he was,
Mhm.
a little sour because I think they did try to buy that player and got outbid, but nonetheless, huge pickup for a position group that I feel like is going to be the most pivotal for this Oklahoma defensive unit. This is a defensive line group that has got young talent, but not very much depth. I don't think not starter level depth for sure. But I think this was a huge step in the right direction. You needed this body, and I think Williams is going to be a great addition to this defense. What do you think about the defensive line? David Stone and Devon Sears and DeJohn Terry. I didn't see DeJohn Terry in the spring game, I don't think. But that was a guy that was on the team last year, and I think he's the biggest of all these guys, about 320 pounds.
Mhm.
So they've got some size, and they've got 4 or 5 that I think can rotate in there. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that Terry kind of plays that true nose tackle. He's a run stopper
Anchor.
more so, and Demonic Williams is that twitchy, go get him on third down, true passing situations. But I mean, look, he can play all. He's a three down defensive lineman if you need him to. But goal line stance, you probably want Terry out there. You probably want both of them out there. Let's be honest. So
Yeah.
but ultimately, you mentioned it, David Stone, very talented freshman coming in. And in most cases, a top 5 overall player coming in is going to be for a team like Oklahoma, who, look, don't take this the wrong way, Sooners fans. You're a middle of the pack SEC team as you step in right now. That's not meant to be offensive. Maybe you understand that, but for a middle of the pack SEC team, a top 5 overall player figures to start right away. I don't know if he's going to crack the starting lineup here, because I do think that this defensive line group, at least right away, he may work into a starting role later in the season, but I think that this defensive line group right here is going to be the, I don't want to say the best, because I really like the linebackers, but um, potentially equally as effective as the linebackers. I think this front 7 or front 8, depending on how they play it, is going to be really, really stout for Oklahoma. And I'm kind of the opposite. I think with the additions here, now they have depth. I'm with you in a sense that they don't have 8 starters, right? This isn't a Georgia defensive line where they can just rotate ones and twos and have absolutely no drop off. But I think they have 6 bona fide studs that can play. Jermaine
Yeah.
Lowell, grad transfer, comes in. I think he's a really important depth piece. That's going to add some experience and shore up this defensive line, and add to that depth. And they've got bodies overall. What they've got 14 defensive linemen total. So the bodies are there. I think that they need to hit on 6 of them, and then if they could have 2 that just play average, I think that they'll be all right.
Yeah. Yeah. I worry about David Stone, and I worry about Jaden Jackson. And
Mhm.
when I say that I worry about them, it's not that I'm worrying about them being a good player. I know that they're talented, but they're unproven. And throwing this whole team's going to have to come to the realization that this is a different talent level that's going to be gone against this year. And the schedule, there's no easy SEC schedules for anyone, but to throw freshmen out there, to have for them to have depth, like we say that they could possibly have a defensive line, that would be to include freshmen. And I'm not saying they can't contribute, but defensive line, especially interior, is a position that is very tough to come in and compete as a 17 or 18-year-old young man. And I like the other pieces, and as I said, Williams here on the screen there on your left, that was a big, big get because I think he's going to be seeing some serious playing time. And whenever I initially started this whole breakdown, I thought that whenever I broke down the defense, that I was going to be saying that the defensive line was the weakness, and I don't really feel that way anymore. So I am with you in that sense. I feel like the secondary is what we need to be keeping an eye on. And I saw a lot of mix-ups, Mason, in that spring game, and some of it was with young guys, and it's great to get that experience, but as an SEC fan, as a Georgia Bulldogs fan, and I'm sure you Oklahoma fans have watched tons of SEC football, but every single time that the University of Georgia trots out a freshman guy in the secondary or a guy that hasn't played a ton, guess what's about to happen? He's about to get tested.
Right at him.
Yep. They're going to go right at him. They're going to go at him multiple times a game. They're going to figure out how to get him one-on-one. They might get him one-on-one and then go no huddle. I mean, especially I'm thinking particularly Tennessee. Oklahoma's got to play Tennessee this year. How is that secondary going to respond to that, Mason? Because and we're going to look at the schedule here in just a minute. We're not going to go game by game, but that's a game that I worry about with this secondary a little bit, just for instance. But look, Billy Bowman is back. That's a big get. That's to have him back is definitely a pleasure for the Oklahoma Sooners. I thought that Robert Spears Jennings looked pretty good in the spring game. I liked what I saw from him. And the coaches before the spring game said that Reggie Powers, he's a freshman safety. They said this guy's really been popping. He's really been showing, why he was such a highly touted recruit and everything. And then I saw him get burned in the spring game. Kind of missed his assignment. And so that's completely normal. And that's where you want it to happen, believe me. But as I just said with the defensive line, I feel the same way about secondary players. If you have a freshman going out there, there's going to be a learning curve, and it's going to be some learning moments that are going to happen. What's your thoughts on the secondary? Because I think that's probably the more I've dug into it, I think that's probably I would say the weakness of this defense.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that they've got some good, not great players in the secondary, and they're going to be tested against the teams who have better skill position players in the SEC and in college football in general. So, just to add to what you say, and I'll kind of speed this up. Des Malone is a transfer coming in. He'll be a senior transfer coming in from San Diego State that I think is probably going to be pretty significant. I don't know that he's going to start right away, but if not, I think he's someone you can cycle in and not have much of a drop off, if any at all. Give some guys some rest and maybe give the offense a different look. And maybe when you go into 5 personnel on the back end, maybe he's the 5th piece there. Somebody that I think has some significant playing time, had some pretty good numbers, 7 pass breakups, an interception last year, a couple of sacks. I mean, he kind of does it all. So he's someone to watch for that I think some outsiders looking in may overlook because he's not the big, bright, shiny transfer name coming in, but he could be one of the more impactful transfers for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it. The only other thing that the note that I missed, and I want to mention these in all of our breakdowns because you feel like an idiot because there's going to be a quarterback somewhere across the country or multiple that are going to get hurt, and nobody ever talks about the backup quarterback.
True.
But Michael Hawkins played a lot in the spring game. Dude's got a freaking cannon. Okay, and I think it was his dad maybe that played, I guess, for the Sooners back in the day, maybe, or one of the Sooners, they played together in the NFL or something. This guy's got a rocket arm. So I liked what I saw from him and just put that on record. If he gets out there, I think that's a guy that you could see pop possibly if he got out there and got a chance to perform. He looked to be pretty good and very, very athletic. This quarterback room, super athletic.
I'll be looking to see Mike Hawkins getting in, against Houston, maybe against Tulane there. But I'll be cheering for Mike Hawkins.
Oh, Mike Hawkins. All right. Yeah, they'll be chanting that from the stands, I'm sure. Mike Hawkins, Mike Hawkins. All right. Let's just look at this schedule for just a second. This is a tough one, but first year in the SEC, I think this to be expected. You're going to get a tough schedule, man, and Oklahoma has certainly got that. The over under win loss projection is set at 7.5. I think the big games are obvious, right? Texas, Alabama. I think those are always going to be big games, no matter what, just because of the blue blood and the name brands that are attached to that. But I think that two of the most important games of the season come back to back for the Oklahoma Sooners, and by two most important, I mean to get over that 7.5 win projection. I think you need to try to win that Tennessee game and that Auburn game. I think that is the most important 2-game span. I think that losing to Texas is not a very big deal. And Oklahoma fans are going to say, what? Yes, it is. Well, I think whenever you're looking at it from 40,000 feet, I don't think that would be that big of a deal. Losing to Alabama, I don't think would be a huge deal. Pop would probably disagree with us because he's going to be there in person to see that sucker. So I don't think he would agree with me on that, but I don't think that would be the end of the world either. I think that Tennessee and that Auburn game, back-to-back weekends there at the end of September, will prove to be the most pivotal 2-game stretch of the 2024 season.
Yeah, man, this is tough. 7.5 wins doesn't sound like a lot, and then you look at this schedule. And you factor in everything we just said about this Oklahoma team, and it looks like an uphill climb to get to 8 wins. Not saying it's not possible at all. There are certainly a lot of games that could go either way, but when you look at Tennessee, who figures to be pretty good this year, Auburn figures to be a step up from where they were last year. That will be a very competitive game. And then, Texas, of course, they're not going to be favored against Texas. They're not going to be favored against Ole Miss. Mizzou is going to be really tough. Alabama, LSU is going to be tough at the end of the year unless they've completely thrown the towel in at that point. And my point is, you count the 4 non-cons and you say, okay, we've got 4 wins. Where the heck are you getting another 4? South Carolina. Okay. I'll give you that. Let's go ahead and give you Auburn at this point. You're still only at 6 wins, and you got to find a way to win 2 more against Tennessee, Texas, Ole Miss, Mizzou, and LSU. That's just going to be really tough. I hate to say it. If I'm betting here, I think 7 is kind of where I think that they'll end up. Certainly, they could get to 8. But everything needs to click. If we're talking 8 wins with this schedule, everything needs to click. Especially if we're gonna go to to stretch it. And I see your college football playoff odds here. If we're gonna bet on yes, you got to have real confidence in that offensive line because you're gonna get tested. The good thing is against Texas though, their defensive line is not going to be that great. So maybe that helps you out there. Their secondary, we don't feel very good about Texas's secondary. Maybe Jackson Arnold can exploit them. I'm starting to like that matchup actually as I kind of work through that. We'll have more on that game as we get closer to it. But hey, if they hit on offensive line, I think that they could end up at 8 wins. So, 7.5 now sounds like a pretty good number to me. I'm flip flopping as I talk about it, but
I think the number's 8.
It's all about it's all about that offensive line though.
I think the number's 8, and I think that if Oklahoma can get to 8, then I think that's an extremely successful season. Now it's going to depend who the 4 you lose to and how bad you lose to them, right? Mm-hmm. I'd I'd rather see Oklahoma go 7-5 and have 5 close losses than 8-4 and get blown the hell out 4 times by Texas, Alabama, Tennessee, and Ole Miss, right? So look, I like Oklahoma against LSU. I think Alabama's going to be tough. Alabama's got a really good offensive line, and that's going to be really tough on that defensive line at the end of the year. I like this Oklahoma team against Ole Miss. I think they're going to be pretty. I think that's going to be a really good game. It's going to be tough on the road, but as I said, Tennessee is at a certain type of offense that you don't see a whole lot, and I feel like you see teams play Tennessee that don't play them every year and really, really struggle to understand what's going on, play in and play out, because it happens so damn fast. And I feel like somebody like Kirby Smart has got a really good handle on what Tennessee's going to throw at you from year to year, and maybe not somebody who doesn't play them every year. Going to be a really fun year, Mason, for the Oklahoma Sooners and fans. We thank you all so much for watching this, and if you're watching this all the way to the end, you're a college football diehard, you might as well just go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because you're going to want to see what we got coming out the whole rest of the year and the rest of this offseason. We're going to be breaking down all the big teams, all the teams that you as Oklahoma fans are going to be playing, everybody just about on that schedule, other than like the Maine Bears. So we'll be breaking all that stuff down. We hope that you'll join us. Thank you so much for tuning in.